I think I learnt a lot about myself as I was getting back on my feet. It kind of changed my perspective and how I look at things, you know, not to take anything for granted because you don't know what can happen to you tomorrow.
But anyway, they sent me home, told me I had a cold.
Just thought it was a really unfortunate timing, bad case of the flu.
And he told us that he had a bit of a headache.
Got taken to the nurse and they confirmed it was the flu.
She saw the doctor 3 times.
3 times in 2 days?
In 2 days.
I was just like, oh, he's got the flu. He's tired.
At the start I was feeling a bit unwell, but I didn't think it was that serious.
She had symptoms that looked like the flu. She took some aspirin, started to feel better later in the day, and it was about 10:30 when we got the call in the taxi. We then had to tell our son that his sister had died, which was very hard.
So with Vincent, when he was walking among us, he was the protector. And now that he's not walking among us, I still feel that this is our duty for him to help protect others.
Firstborn son, full of life, full of laughter, full of sneakiness, loved his music.
A stranger was just a new friend.
Yeah.
So Wednesday the 21st of September, he goes, oh, I've got a bit of a sore leg. I went, oh yeah, okay, see how you go. And he went out to the end of the drive and then he came back and he goes, oh, I feel sick. Okay. Goodbye. Just stay at home. I rang him at, I think it might have been about 10 o'clock to see how he was getting on. There was no reply. And he messaged me back about 11ish and said, oh, I was sleeping, but I've been throwing up. I was just like, oh, he's got the flu. He's tired. And came back about 10 o'clock, checked on him, we were going to bed. Gave him some more Panadol. Had some more electrolytes. I was like, okay, right, well, we're going to bed. Kia pai tō moi, have a good sleep. Said,
I
love you, bub, and walked out.
And in the morning, I was at work. I said to Taylor, go and wake your brother up. And he come in and he saw Janelle, he says, Mum, I can't wake Vincent up.
And thankfully I had my phone on me and it was just instant 111. And then the ambulance officer came through and she said, look, we don't know what's happened. He's gone. We don't know. It's a whole process that no parents should ever have to go through.
No.
The only thing I knew of meningitis was there was a rash and adverse to light.
There were no signs of a rash or anything like that. Or no aversion to sunlight.
Be aware of all symptoms because it might not be the flu.
No.
Trust your gut.
Definitely.
Because you don't want to be in the position that we're in.
I'm an Associate Professor at the University of Auckland and my area of expertise is vaccines and vaccination. Meningitis is something that happens when there's an inflammation around the tissues around your brain and around your spinal cord. So it can be caused by lots of different things. So not just sort of meningococcal bacterias and things like that. It can be caused by viruses and a whole range of bacteria and other things as well.
So I was in my last year of high school. It presented like a hangover. I was nauseous, and then as time went on it just got worse and worse. I got blurred vision. I was just vomiting up everything that I tried to eat and it just presented like the flu pretty much. Got taken to the nurse and they confirmed it was the flu. The next night I fainted in the shower, so I got sent back to the nurse again. They said it was the flu again. About a week went past, the blurred vision got worse. I pretty much couldn't even see a thing. I was sleeping about 20 hours a day, and then from about day 8 onwards I can't remember anything for the next about 3 days.
I don't know what it was, but something was telling me you need to get to the emergency department, and so that's where we went. And she was examined by doctors there, and again, no urgency. It was the flu or a virus. And then we got transferred through into the next part of the hospital, and it was a medical student that was sent over to us. It was probably the first time that someone, you know, had actually sat and listened to everything that I'd said. You know, she did some tests on Phoebe and said, look, something just doesn't look right here. I'm going to go and get a second opinion. And so we went and got a CT scan, and that was when everything just erupted. And they came running in going, category 1, your daughter's brain is swelling. We need to get her to the operating theatre straight away or she's going to die. So when the surgeon did finally come and see me, she said, we've got Phoebe stable, the surgery's gone okay. And then came the but. And she said, but it's meningitis and it's the worst possible strain that you can get. And we've administered antibiotics, but we don't know if it's going to work. The next 24 hours was critical, and it was going to go one of 3 ways. She was going to die. She would be left with, you know, everlasting consequences like paraplegic, amputations, blindness, deafness. Or the third way was she would come through okay. And when you were sleeping in the visitor waiting area and you can hear footsteps running, it's like, oh my God, don't run towards me. And then when I'd go into Phoebe, they would be doing tests on her, like, what's your name, what's your date of birth, you know, what day of the week is it? And Phoebe was struggling to answer them. And I'd be like standing there going, it's Thursday. Like, you have to answer it right. You know, there's no option here, you have to answer it right.
I was in hospital for 7 days, but I'm just lucky that there was no consequences.
I spent the next 4 years blaming myself, and I kept ruminating those questions of, why did I not go to the hospital sooner? Why did I not know about meningitis? Why did I not know that the vaccination she'd had when she was 4 wasn't a lifelong vaccination?
So with meningitis, some of the lasting effects can be neurological deficits, think problems with memory, exhaustion. Also, deficits to hearing. People can lose their hearing as a result of having meningitis. And people who have septicemia or the blood poisoning can be left with significant scarring, and also that's what can result in limb amputations.
So I was in the hospital for quite a long time, around like 250 sort of days. Kind of like beaten the illness, but you were just quite weak, so you had to build up your strength. I'm Ripu Bhatia and I survived meningococcal disease. I grew up in Auckland and then I moved over to Sydney to do university studies. I was studying journalism and just, you know, kind of feeling like, I guess, an adult sort of for the first time and having your kind of independence. It was July 2015 and I'd gone out with some friends to a restaurant. So at the start I was feeling a bit unwell, but I didn't think it was that serious, so I went anyway. And when I was at the restaurant I started feeling quite cold and yeah, just really, it was just unnatural sort of cold, like just because there was a fire on inside, there was no real reason to feel cold. I didn't have much of an appetite either. And so I ended up just leaving and rushing back to my apartment and taking a hot shower and then just jumping into bed. And the next morning I woke up and I was just in this blinding pain in my feet. They felt freezing cold and I couldn't walk on them. So I was kind of like crawling around the apartment and yeah, I was trying to reach out to people and be like, I need help in that, and I had these security people came and took me to the hospital, and then when I was there, the person asked me if I had chicken pox because I had like red dots on my arms. Yes, and then they sort of took me to a room, and the doctors came and they told me to like speak to my dad, and they put you in like an induced coma. I woke up in quite like a groggy sort of state, and I was quite immobilised, like my arms and legs had turned black, so I couldn't really move or anything. And the doctors told me they'd have to like amputate the arms and legs, so you kind of like wanted them gone at that point because they were just dead and you couldn't move them. And I was also very weak, like I only weighed like 30 kilograms or something because I'd lost a lot of weight, and eventually came back home. And then there was a period of just like relearning independence and that, and just how to do different things. And so I used like a prosthetic arm to eat, and I used like an iPad sort of touchscreen device. And with the illness, I also had my nose and upper lip removed essentially. So after my nose was reconstructed and I was able to breathe properly, I started applying for a lot of jobs. So I ended up getting a job with the news website Stuff, and I've been working there for over 5 years now, just as a news reporter, and just helping people tell their stories and reporting on different issues and that. No, I'm in a really good place now, and just quite focused on my career and just staying fit and healthy and just spending time with like friends and family and that.
Yeah, he was just a fun-loving, bit of a mummy's boy as well. And he just loved life. He was just full of fun, wasn't he?
Yeah, cheeky, but I class him as a lad's lad. He called home and he told us that he had a bit of a headache and that he'd been weight training. He felt as if there was a little bit of pressure behind his eye and something had popped. So we told him to go and see the matron and get a paracetamol. We phoned him on a Thursday, spoke to him, and he said, yep, felt a lot better. He finished rugby training at about 5 o'clock on the Friday. He'd gone upstairs to his room into the dorms. Had gone to see a friend to get a towel off him, borrow a towel. He'd gone to get a shower. The guys had pranked him and locked him out of his room, so he was still in his towel. He managed to get back into his room, and then, let's say that's 5:30, and nobody saw him again until 10 o'clock when the housemaster went round to do lights out and found him dead on the floor. He was still in his towel, so we can only presume that around about 5:30, 6 o'clock, something had happened.
And then they came back 2 weeks later saying it was meningitis. He had meningococcal septicemia.
I think the only thing that we really knew about meningitis was that it existed. We didn't know about the different strains, so really we were totally naive about the disease.
Hi, I'm Sian. I'm a meningitis survivor. I remember just waking up not feeling well.
I was living with Sian and the boys. Pete was working away, and she came in and said, Mum, I don't think I can drive. Can you take me to the doctors? And I just took one look at her and I thought, oh, I said, Pete, I've got to go.
I had my sunglasses on, I had closed all the curtains in the house, a hoodie on, because everything was just so bright and really intense. And
she said she had this headache, which she said went from the back of her head and all the way round.
My head felt like it was just going to explode.
So as I'm driving there, I said, can you put your chin on your chest? Is your neck stiff? And she's going, yes, yes. I'm thinking, oh no, oh no.
After that, everything sort of became a bit of a blur for me.
With 20 minutes of getting to the hospital, she was put into a side ward. She'd had, I don't know how many vials of blood taken and lumbar puncture. And then the doctor came and said it was meningitis, but she said it's not the life-threatening strain. And then she was in hospital for about a week. They just put her onto some antibiotics and then just told her when she came home she just had to rest.
I went back to work A couple of months later, when I did, I wore my sunglasses in work because it was still too bright for me. That was all back in 2017, and now I still have headaches, I get migraines. I'd never really had a headache prior. I get migraine vertigo, where I can literally be crawling on the floor because I can't move.
So I'm going to call it brain fog, memory loss, and also if you kind of see her when she's tired, she'll slur her words.
Bright lights is still a thing. I can no longer drive at night. Noise is another big one. Even going to the supermarket can be quite triggering for me. Yeah, it does have a big impact on the way your day-to-day life goes. Don't be afraid to ask. If you think that it is potentially meningitis, then ask the doctors, ask the nurses, and say, this is what I'm thinking.
Knowing the signs and symptoms, knowing the entitlement to vaccinations, allow the Meningitis Foundation to continue to fight to get free vaccinations for everybody. But those signs and symptoms, don't take no for an answer. Run with your gut feeling, and if you think there's something wrong with you, your child, your parents, your grandparents, everybody's susceptible, go with your gut and seek medical advice.
The vaccines that we have available today for meningococcal disease cover most of the disease, which is great, but you do need to think about having 2 different vaccines. So there's a vaccine that covers group A, C, W and Y, so 4, and there's another vaccine that covers group B and quite a bit of some of the other types as well, but it's targeting B, and as a bonus it also gives some protection against gonorrhea. So if a person was choosing to have one of the vaccines, the group B vaccine would be the best, because most of the disease in New Zealand is caused by group B, followed by some of the others. So that would be the first choice, and that's offered in the infant program and also to young people living in hostels and things like that. I guess if you're looking to purchase these vaccines, if you're not eligible to get them for free, there are 2 different ones, and for the best coverage you would get both. But if you had to choose between one, the group B one will cover more disease in New Zealand at the moment than the other one.
I was at work and all of a sudden I felt really weak, felt like I was going to be sick. I just had this fever. My friend, he drove me home. From probably about midnight, I was just really restless. And then it got to about 3 a.m. My hands had felt really cold. I didn't really have much sensation in my hands, so I decided I'm going to get up and I'm going to have a hot shower. And as soon as I got into the bathroom and I had taken my shirt off, there was this big purple rash across my chest and up my arms. And that's when I was like, something's not quite right here.
And when I woke up and the bathroom light was on, I thought, that's weird. So I got up and went through to him, showed me his hands, and it was really white, and you just said it was so cold you couldn't warm it up.
Yeah.
And so I just said to him, go back to bed, you'll be right in the morning. And so he went back to bed. I went into our room, and I don't know why, but I looked up Healthline, and so I rang them and went through a range of things, and they said to me, you need to go and get a clear glass and roll it over the marks on his arms. And I said, what's happening? What am I supposed to see? Because nothing's changing. And she said, you need to put the phone down. I'm going to ring the ambulance now because your son's seriously ill. I think they took him into HDU, and all of a sudden they were cutting his clothes off, and his body had started to shut down, his organs had started to fail. And then someone came out to me and said, have you got family here? And I said, no, my husband and my daughters are at home. And the nurse said, I think you need to ring them. They need to come to the hospital now. And that's when I knew that he was really sick. They said that that's what they suspected, is that he had meningitis. And then he was moved into ICU for 4 days. It has such an overwhelming impact on your body top to toe.
At my lowest weight, I was at 46, 40, and I was skin and bone.
We had no strength in your legs, you had to learn to walk
Yeah,
again.
that was another thing.
Once you were back in the war.
Yeah.
So Nick had septicemia, so it was like he had frostbite. Because they had to remove his fingers, they had to then do an operation, and they removed the dead tissue from the fingers that were affected, and then they put that into his tummy, and it helps the skin regrow and keeps the blood flow to his fingers. And so that required 2 major surgeries.
I think it was, what, 4 weeks on one side and then 3 on the other?
And so then he had subsequent surgeries to then tidy his fingers up. Healthline was our lifesaver. So if we hadn't phoned them, I would have told Nick to go back to bed and I'll take you to the doctor in the morning. Well, the morning mightn't have happened if I hadn't rung Healthline.
There's a lot of, oh, you know, he'll be right, I'll just sleep it off. But with something like meningitis, you go to sleep it off, you might not wake up the next morning.
Miwa was an all-round type of child. She was very academic. She loved music. She had just completed Outward Bound. She was training to run 10K. She really had no health issues in her life at all. But yeah, just a really kind, special person. It was orientation week at Canterbury University. On Sunday morning, she'd woken up not feeling very well. She had symptoms that looked like the flu. We called her at 5:30 on Sunday night, and she said she had a headache and she wasn't feeling well, but she was her normal positive upmarket self. At about 5 o'clock, some of her flatmates heard her in the kitchen, and she was walking around, obviously somewhat dazed and unsure, and they just took her back to bed and sat with her. And then at about 7:30 in the morning, she stopped breathing. And it was about 10:30 when we got the call, and we then had to tell our son that his sister had died, which was very hard. The question I constantly ask myself is, why didn't I know? Why didn't I know about meningitis? Why wasn't I aware of this risk? What I'd like people to know is that it's a disease we could eradicate if we extended the vaccinations enough. And so if I could get that message out to young people, to parents, to grandparents, to get these young people who are so vulnerable in that vulnerable age to get vaccinated and take that risk out of their lives. There are enough risks for young people that you can't protect yourself from. So this is one you can. So just do it.
The people that have the greatest risk, anyone's at risk, right? Anyone can get these diseases, but the people that are most at risk of meningococcal disease are people in certain age groups, particularly the very youngest, infants under a year or 2 of age, and then children under 5, followed by people who are in their adolescence and early adulthood, and then older people. But also across all age groups, there's people who've got problems with their immune system. So they're another important group as well. And also people living in crowded conditions and other places where you're perhaps more at risk for coming in contact with the bug.
In the space of 72 hours, we went from being happily going to be married to getting married to having, you know, your whole life kind of flipped upside down. Me and Jamaica, we met in year 13 at high school. We were together for 8.5 years. She was just the kindest, gentlest soul, really. So the wedding day was the 9th of December, 2017. It was a beautiful day. It was incredibly hot. And as she was walking down the aisle, I just knew something wasn't quite right with her. She just looked a bit unwell. And she was covered in goosebumps like she was cold. But we got through the vows, that was all good. We went away to do photographs. And she just said, I'm just too sick. Like, I don't think I can get through it. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's go back to the venue. We'll just sort of put you in a room and like give you pills, see what we can, try to get through the day, you know, if we can. We still at that point didn't think anything was critically wrong, just thought it was a really unfortunate timing, bad case of the flu. You know, she was complaining about having a headache, I think, and you know, I think she was quite sensitive to light, and so we just kind of periodically checked on her. She tried coming out once to sit at the main table, but she didn't stay out for very long. And then it was clear that she wasn't getting better, and she just wanted to go back to our hotel that we had booked, just to try and sleep it off, really. She hopped into bed. You know, I sort of kissed her and said, look, I'll go back to the wedding and I'll sort the guests and I'll be front of house, you know. And I think it was about 9 p.m, my auntie went and checked on her, who's a nurse, and had said she's actually looking better, she's getting better, and Jamaica said she was feeling better. I got dropped back to the hotel, and I think I arrived there just before midnight. I turned on the light and I went to kiss her hello, and I just stopped myself because I immediately could see that she was just covered head to toe in a rash. And so I just instinctively knew that something was very, very, very wrong. Yeah, the ambulance arrived, and you could everything just went from thinking everything was pretty bad to then everything kind of got significantly worse. And yeah, we arrived at the hospital. They worked on her for quite a long time, and they told us that unfortunately she was gone. And so yeah, it would have been about 3 a.m. When she died. And so yeah, she texted me about her symptom, obviously, of the sore neck, which apparently I don't even think is a common symptom necessarily, but it is a telling symptom at 3 a.m. the previous morning. So then, yeah, 12 hours later after that, we got married at 3 p.m, just after, because she was a little bit late. And then 12 hours after that, she was dead. I think it's so important to be aware of the disease and just have it in the back of your mind, so that if, despite it being a relatively rare, I guess, occurrence and a reasonably rare disease, I guess, it still happens to people, and the mortality of it is quite high. And so I think it's just important to get in early, and just be aware that it's around. And that was always my biggest thing. I didn't know about it. It just didn't seem like it could happen. But it just can happen randomly. It can happen to anyone.
There's a range of vaccines that protect against meningitis, different types of meningitis, and septicemia. None of them will keep you protected for your life, but they induce a long-term memory. So you have the memory there, and you can go and give it a boost. But diseases like meningococcal disease move so fast. You know, you hear the stories about somebody being well in the morning and very sick by evening. That's not enough time for the memory to that disease to kick in and produce the antibodies and things and those other goodies that you need. That takes a few days. So you need to have a good presence of antibody ready to go. And that's why, to maintain that protection, you need to get boosters. But generally, I would be thinking you'd want to look at sort of 5 yearly if you needed to maintain that protection. Some of them perhaps give you protection more like 10 years, but as an individual, you don't know, and we all do differ a little bit. So I think it's really about thinking when those highest risk periods of life are.
I kind of just woke up one morning and I felt a bit off. Through my neck was really sore. I felt under the weather, a bit headachy, that sort of thing. First call I did was to my auntie Marg, and she told me to ring the healthline. They advised that we went and saw the urgent doctor. I was seen very briefly, but anyway, they sent me home, told me I had a cold. I was living by myself at that time, so Mum decided to stay with me that night, and then I kind of just deteriorated from there. I became quite disoriented. I was up vomiting a lot during the night, and then I started to get feverish That's when I called out to Mum. Mum was driving and I was just trying to tell her to hurry because I just felt like something was not right. And then I have no memory. I did start to go into multi-organ failure at that point. They started to suspect it might have been meningitis. They ended up putting me into an induced coma that night where it was touch and go whether I'd survive. So I ended up being in an induced coma for 9 days. My kidneys, liver and lungs pretty much all shut down and my heart was not great. I lost my spleen due to a blood clot and then I got septicemia too with the meningitis. So after waking up, I couldn't even lift my arms off the bed, couldn't lift my head off the bed. And that was like that for a few weeks. So after the first 3 weeks, I went to the renal ward. My kidneys, they were still not working. So I was on getting dialysis and then had the first surgery. So that was the toe amputations and they did skin grafts. The grafts didn't take over my Achilles. And then on Christmas Eve, I had to go into hospital to see the orthopedic surgeon just to get an opinion on my right ankle. And he told me I had to have surgery that day or I'd end up losing it. It was severely infected. So it was probably maybe 6 months at home, recuperating, trying to gain weight, trying to get more mobile. With the fentanyl, it helped relieve the pain for maybe a day, but I had changed the patch every 3 days. And so 2 out of those 3 days I could hardly walk because it was so painful. And it got to the point where I was like, well, this foot's not functional. I'm not gonna be able to do anything on it. And ended up amputating in June of 2021. So it's been 3 years now. It was a good decision. Even though, I mean, obviously there's still ups and downs with it and issues and things, but it's way better than the foot I was left with. The following year, my kidneys started going downhill. My mum and my older brother both got the workup to see if they could donate. Because of their blood type, they couldn't directly donate to me. So that's when we went in the exchange program. Nathan ended up being the chosen one. It just so happened that they could find a match for him within the chain. So yeah, I got my kidney late last year. It's been pretty good since. We did have the B vaccine that went around the primary schools, but I ended up getting the W strain and we were only vaccinated for the B. And I mean, it would have been out of my system by the time I was 23 as well. So yeah, definitely could have been a different story if I had been vaccinated. So I think obviously that is the main message, but also to know the signs and symptoms. When I rang the health line at the start, every second question was, do you have a rash? And I didn't, and the rash didn't show up until I was in ICU in Dunedin. So that was over 2 days after my initial symptoms. Life is very different to what it was before. I mean, I don't even think I can remember what it was like before I got sick.
I think what's really important for people to know is that meningitis and septicemia are caused by many different organisms, and a vaccine that protects you against one type isn't going to protect you against another. So to be aware of that, and also that the protection isn't necessarily lifelong, so to always remain vigilant.
Courtney was just a normal 16-year-old girl. She was just a bubbly, bright. She was quite an intelligent wee thing.
We didn't actually realise how wide her circle was and how many people she'd actually touched until she'd gone.
Pretty special kid, really. Yeah. Courtney kind of just, her first comment to me, she said, "Oh, Mum, I think I've got hypothermia," but it was really just quite a casual offhand comment. And then as we were actually heading down to Twizel, it was a couple of days after Christmas, and I was a little bit concerned about her because she actually slept all the way down, which is not something Courtney kind of does. She saw the doctor 3 times.
3 times in 2 days?
In 2 days. And it was on that 3rd visit she collapsed in their surgery. And then we were transferred to Timaru Hospital.
And so we spent several hours there, and then after probably a couple of hours, they come and took us aside and said that Courtney was dying and that they didn't know what she was dying from. So the Westpac was called after several hours that she left Timaru in the helicopter. That was the last time we saw Courtney conscious. So, and sort of the last thing she said to us was that make sure they got a double bed for me and make sure they don't. Yeah.
She said to me, probably, the hardest thing, and it's never left me, and it never ever will, is she said, "Mummy, please don't let them put me to sleep forever." So they were the last words that Courtney ever said to us. So it was pretty heartbreaking that, yeah. Of course, once we got to Christchurch Hospital, she'd undergone surgery immediately. And again, they weren't sure what it was, but then that's when they said they suspected meningitis. And sadly, 3 days later, they just couldn't get in front of it. The hardest thing was that she was actually so heavily bandaged because of all her operations that we couldn't even hold her hand, you know, and that's just pretty tough. Yeah, pretty tough.
Yeah, it's a decision that no parent should have to make, is to turn off life support for their child. So,
yeah. There's always that big hole in our life that nothing will ever fill that. So I liken it to people, you know, that it's like life's like a jigsaw puzzle and someone's actually just throwing ours in the air and we can never find that one piece. It'll never be complete again.
For me, you know, it's things like driving down the road and seeing a car coming towards you with a father and daughter in it, and they're laughing and joking, you know, and it just knocks you for six. When we were told it was meningitis, we had no knowledge of what meningitis was. We thought that Courtney was protected by the vaccination she was first given as a baby, and so, yeah. You know, if we had known there was another vaccine available, but she would have had it.
And that's why we're really proactive about informing all our young people to get vaccinated, you know.
The whole sad thing about this is that it didn't need to happen. I mean, if we had a vaccination program where everyone was protected, this wouldn't have happened, and we know it will work. We know the vaccinations work. We just need to get them into people's arms. You know, this is a disease that is actually completely preventable. Yeah, look, we just don't want anyone else to go to hell and back like we have.